Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to NoDQ&A video right here on NoDQ.com and the YouTube channel, youtube.com/AaronRiffNoDQ. We are now less than 2 weeks away until WWE WrestleMania, the ultimate thrill ride. Got your questions from twitter.com/AaronRiff using the hashtag RoadToNoDQ1000. Let's get started today with the first one, which comes from Philippe. Maybe a first time asker, not sure. Hey Aaron, has this Raw in Brooklyn been one of the weakest ones of the recent weeks? Your opinion. Overall, I thought the show was okay. I would give it a thumbs in the middle. I thought WWE did a solid job in building up WrestleMania, but in terms of the quality of the wrestling, it was not a very strong show. Other than Samoa Joe versus Sami Zayn, this Raw really lacked in quality, I thought. The crowd was interesting. The crowd, of course, they were doing all sorts of crazy chants. They were chanting for Paige, but most notably, they were chanting CM Punk on several occasions. Triple H was out there trying to do his promo. To Triple H's credit, the guy's a pro. He was able to get through it, but the fans kept chanting CM Punk at him. The crowd was doing the what chants at Triple H. I like the setup for next week. You know, I'm not a big fan of the contract signing segments, but in this case, it makes sense in the storyline. Triple H proposing an unsanctioned match with Seth Rollins for WrestleMania. And if Rollins wants the match, he has to sign the documents stating that he will not sue WWE if something bad happens to him at WrestleMania. I like that storyline. I like that being the go-home edition of Raw heading into WrestleMania, this segment where Seth Rollins will sign these papers. I thought that was well done. And I enjoyed the segment with Mick Foley being fired. I thought that was done well. We all knew it was coming. We knew Mick Foley was going to be written off WWE television so he can have his hip surgery. And I thought the execution was well done. Although I will say it was a little weird, Sami Zayn coming out there and coming to Mick Foley's defense when you think about just a couple months ago, Mick Foley and Sami Zayn were at odds, and now all of a sudden Sami Zayn is defending Foley. But beyond that, I thought it was well done. I liked the backstage segment with Sami Zayn and Mick Foley hugging, and Foley all sweaty and hugging Cesaro and Sheamus and Bayley, and then of course Triple H there sarcastically telling Foley to have a nice day. It was a very nice way to write Mick Foley out of the storylines. I thought it was well done. So there were some good moments on Raw, but I wish the quality of the wrestling was better, and there were a lot of video packages, so there was quite a bit of filler, but at the end of the day, the goal is to build up WrestleMania, and I thought WWE overall did a good job. This one comes from Dylan. Do you think next week Seth Rollins will say he cannot compete at WrestleMania and then have Finn Balor face Triple H at WrestleMania? No, Seth Rollins, for all purposes, is set to go for WrestleMania. He is healed up from his injury, and they are going to do this match. What's going on is WWE is taking advantage of what happened in real life. Seth Rollins really did get hurt. That was not a work, but Seth Rollins did recover from the injury. It was touch and go for WrestleMania, but he has recovered, and WWE decided to play up on what happened in real life and make that part of the storyline where Seth Rollins is in no condition to get physically involved with Triple H. No doctor in the world will clear him unless it's Dr. Nick Riviera. And next week, they're going to do this segment where Rollins has to sign an agreement that he will not make WWE liable if he gets hurt at WrestleMania. So it's kind of like when Steve Austin got hurt and then WWE turned it into a storyline where Austin was trying to get back in the ring. And, you know, maybe this will work for Seth Rollins. If WWE looks back at that Steve Austin storyline and how that worked really well to elevate Austin, maybe Rollins could continue to build up some momentum. It feels like his babyface run has been flat, although when he did come back to attack Triple H, when he dropped the crutch, the crowd went crazy for that. So if the storyline is done correctly, I think Seth Rollins could really gain some momentum for this, and I fully expect Rollins to win. I think, they're going to play up on it as much as possible and just go with that psychology. You look back at 2002 with Shawn Michaels and Triple H, they really played up on the real life back injury to Shawn Michaels, and Triple H would, do the sidewalk slam onto the chair, and Shawn Michaels selling his back, and just great stuff that people were convinced Shawn Michaels was seriously hurt by Triple H. If they look at that match and what worked with that match and implement it into WrestleMania, I think Triple H and Seth Rollins, from a psychological standpoint, can be a really awesome match. And I fully expect WWE to take advantage of that and work it into the story of the match. And it should be awesome. I mean, Triple H is a master at doing these kind of matches with the in-ring psychology. And I think it's going to be a great match. It could very well steal the show at WrestleMania. This one comes from Chris. Hey Aaron, is it just me or is Sheamus now a face? He is getting more cheers than boos in recent weeks. Before I answer this, real quick about Finn Balor, my gut feeling is he's not going to be at WrestleMania. I think they're going to hold off on him until after WrestleMania. I suppose, I think I mentioned this in one of the recent videos, that maybe Braun Strowman wins the Andre the Giant Battle Royal, and then Finn Balor's not an entrant, but he comes out after the match and has a confrontation with Strowman. I could see something like that happening, but I don't expect to see Balor in a match unless they do Joe versus Balor at the last minute, but you would think if that was going to happen, they would have done it already. Anyways, moving on here to the question about Sheamus. Yeah, it does appear that way, that Sheamus is now a face. He was hugging Mick Foley, and, like I talked about earlier, he was praising Foley, and it seems like Sheamus is a face now, which is fine. Cesaro and Sheamus, they're a fun team. And, Sheamus, for a while they were doing it where, Sheamus would play to the crowd and get booed, and Cesaro would play to the crowd and get cheered, and that was funny. But now it just feels like Sheamus has just gradually just gone into the direction of being a babyface, which is fine to me, Cesaro. Sheamus and Cesaro. They are an interesting team, and it's worked out for them, They have done well as a team, I think better than people were probably expecting. They just threw those guys together hoping something would stick, and it did. And they're doing really well for themselves. So, Sheamus as a babyface is fine with me. This one comes from @ISayWhatever666. If Paige were to end it due to this situation, how critical would it be to the wrestling business in general? I doubt it would have any real effect on WWE because WWE has not punished her. If they did punish her and then she did something to herself, then that would make WWE look really bad. I think pretty much everyone, including the company, is seeing her as a victim here, that her personal material was stolen. I really hope that she gets through this okay and she bounces back. The stuff that her parents have been talking about. I mean, I'm not sure how much they are doing her a favor by talking about that stuff publicly. I think the best course of action is to ignore it and let it pass. You look at what happened with Seth Rollins and his picture being leaked out on the internet. WWE ignored it, Rollins ignored it, and it pretty much went away. Nobody talks about it these days. I think that continuing to draw attention to it is the wrong way to go. I understand Paige's parents being concerned, but I think addressing it publicly like that is not doing her any favors. But that's just my personal opinion. I think the best thing to do is just to drop it. Don't talk about it. And eventually people will move on to something else. We got WrestleMania coming up. People are going to be talking about WrestleMania. That is going to be the focus. Let the Paige thing go away. And eventually people will forget about it. And Paige can go on to rebuilding her career. And hopefully she'll be back in WWE one day. It's all very much up in the air right now. But I'm hopeful she's able to get it together and come back to WWE and have a great comeback. I mean, what a story that would be after all this drama for her to come back and get back into the mix and become a major star in WWE again. That would be awesome. This one comes from Kyle Mitchell. Hey Aaron, is there any chance of Goldberg getting a clean sweep of Brock Lesnar, winning at WrestleMania? Neither need the win in my opinion. I think Brock needs it more because they're paying him a ton of money and he still has another year left on his contract. Now, I said this before, if Goldberg is staying with WWE past WrestleMania, then you could make an argument for Goldberg to win, but I think you have to go with Brock winning this one. That is what makes logical sense, in my opinion, with Brock being the guy that's going to be around. You know, unless Goldberg's going to do more matches and work more of a regular schedule, and I don't see that happening. Brock is expected to be working more dates in this next year, and we still don't know if Goldberg can even work a match of any kind of length. With Brock, we know he can. We know he can do a 20-minute match if that's what the situation calls for. So I really don't know if it's a good idea for Brock to win, or for Brock to lose. They could do the storyline where Goldberg is Brock Lesnar's kryptonite, but I would be surprised. I would be surprised. Even if Goldberg signs another deal with WWE to stick around, I would still be surprised if Goldberg beat Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. I really would. This one comes from Robert Hansen. If the WWE Hall of Fame were for real, who would be your top 10 superstars and women to get in first? I did not prepare for this in advance, so I'm just going to go with what's off the top of my head, and I really think that's the best way to do it. If we were starting the WWE Hall of Fame right now from scratch, and I was going to induct 10 people into it, first off, you have to go Bruno Sammartino, arguably the greatest champion of his era, and maybe in WWE history, you know, with his track record, what he was able to accomplish, and those consistent sellouts at Madison Square Garden for all those years. Bruno was a huge draw, a great WWE champion, a great role model. Bruno has to be right at the top of the list. Andre the Giant, of course, and he was the first person inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame, and I think rightfully so. Andre would have to be there. Hogan, Steve Austin, and it's a toss-up between Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. If we're doing 5 men and 5 women, you know, probably Shawn over Bret, just because Shawn had more longevity, but Bret had a great career as well. As far as the women go, you know, Fabulous Moolah, I think, would have to be at the top of the list. And then Trish Stratus, of course, Lita, Chyna, you know, she's not in the Hall of Fame, but I think she did break ground for women in wrestling. And, you know, that I would do the 6 men and 4 women. That would be my list, with Bret and Shawn being added to the men. So that would be my top 10, just off the top of my head, if we were to redo the WWE Hall of Fame and start it from scratch. This one comes from Andrew. How much of a role do you think JR played in the Attitude Era, and do you think it would be as memorable without him? I think Jim Ross definitely played a significant role in the Attitude Era, because JR was responsible for getting over what you see on television, and JR was selling it. And the fact that JR was so passionate, he made the audience care. And that's why I think the commentators play a really critical role, because if they don't care, why should we care? There needs to be the passion and the excitement from the announcers. They're the ones that are helping tell the story and get the story across to the viewers. And few people, I mean, arguably JR was the greatest as far as getting people invested in what they were watching and really selling the product to the masses. I mean, JR was a great salesman. He made everything seem important. He made even the minor things seem important. And by the way, my thoughts are with Jim Ross. You know, his wife was in a serious accident, so I just wanted to mention that real quick. I think Jim Ross was very important in the success of the Attitude Era. And of course, not just as a commentator, but as head of talent relations. Jim Ross was responsible for signing a lot of key people that became major stars in WWE. Jim Ross definitely did a lot for the company and absolutely deserves the recognition for his accomplishments. This one comes from Mr. Yuck. Would a full makeover and repackaging of Luke Harper be what it would take to make him a main event caliber star? I think that maybe some tweaks would be good for him. You know, if he's not going to be reunited with Bray Wyatt, I think it might be best to change up his character to distance himself from the Wyatt family a little bit. I'm not sure changing the color of his wife beater is the way to go, but, you know, just little tweaks, you know, maybe not cut his hair or anything. I think the long hair and the beard works well for him. Maybe getting rid of the wife beater, changing it up a little bit. I'm not sure what you would do exactly, but maybe changing his attire a little bit more than just changing the color of the wife beater. Other than that, you know, I think just him being a crazy man, you know, he kind of reminds me of Bruiser Brody a little bit. Let him be, you know, a little bit of a wild man and, you know, just come into his own, you know, as his own character, not just a follower of Bray Wyatt. And, you know, the fans really like the guy. And I'm hopeful that after WrestleMania, they will give him a renewed push. It feels like, you know, after he lost the match to AJ Styles, he's kind of gotten lost in the shuffle. And maybe it'll be down to him and Braun Strowman at WrestleMania in the Andre Battle Royal. I could very well see that happening. And maybe he'll get a renewed push after Mania. I'm really hoping. You know, the guy's got a lot of talent, and the fans are behind him. You know, he's considered to be one of those, you know, dark horse contenders to be a major star in WWE. And, you know, if they really give him a good boost, he could, you know, be an unlikely top WWE superstar. This one comes from Zach. Who had the better matches, John Cena and CM Punk or John Cena and AJ Styles? Who would the crowd side with in a Punk versus Styles matchup today? Oh man, that second part is really difficult to answer. I think I would give the edge to John Cena and CM Punk just because I think of all the CM Punk matches with John Cena and all the AJ Styles matches with John Cena, I think the most memorable one was Money in the Bank, John Cena and CM Punk in 2011. That match, you know, had all the stars aligned. Everything was working well. Everything played out just about the best way possible with that match. You know, you had an ideal storyline. You had a very compelling storyline with CM Punk and his contract being up and the pipe bomb and everything. You know, it was almost perfect. You know, the technical aspect of the match, you know, maybe it was a little less spectacular than John Cena versus AJ Styles, but when you look at all the elements put together, you know, I think you have to go with Cena and CM Punk. You know, I think if Cena and AJ had a little bit more of a compelling storyline, other than just the typical, you know, John Cena's fake and, oh wow, picture just fell in the background. The show must go on here, but like I was saying, you know, if John Cena and AJ Styles had more than your basic, you know, Cena's a jerk and, you know, AJ calls himself the workhorse. You know, the typical storyline, it was just a repeat of storylines we've seen before with CM Punk and John Cena and Daniel Bryan and John Cena. Then I think I'd give the edge to Cena and AJ. And as far as who the crowd would side with, that I think is almost impossible to answer. I really think it would be 50-50. I mean, I think it would be one of those matches where the crowd would be hot for both guys, and you know, there would be no favorite. It would be, you know, let's go AJ, let's go Punk, and it would be the crowd popping for both guys and doing the this is awesome and the fight forever chant and, you know, all that stuff. You know, the fans would not boo anything. They would just cheer both guys, you know. It would be that kind of scenario. This one comes from Ben W. Murray. What is your favorite post-Mania rematch? Example, John Cena and JBL at Judgment Day. Well, you know, I hate to have to think about it, so I'm just going to go with yours. I mean, John Cena and JBL was one of the most underrated matches, in my opinion. You know, I was never a huge fan of JBL as WWE Champion, but I think that match with Cena and JBL after Judgment Day was what they should have done at WrestleMania. You know, WrestleMania should have been the fight to the death sort of scenario where these guys are just having this crazy fight And the WrestleMania match just felt like a random SmackDown TV match, while the Judgment Day match felt like a blockbuster pay-per-view match. So I might go with that. And there's been a lot of matches. I remember there was a CM Punk Chris Jericho match that followed WrestleMania, and I thought that was definitely better than what they had at WrestleMania. There have been several occasions over the years, just ones that I cannot think off the top of my head, but the JBL John Cena one's definitely one that comes to my mind right away. This one comes from Matt Big. Would you say Shawn Michaels' 1996 title run is underrated? I would say very much so. I would say that it was a good title reign overall. WWE business was down during that period, and that's when WCW really took charge and gained control. But yeah, Shawn Michaels definitely had some really strong matches during that period. The match with Diesel at Good Friends, Better Enemies, that was an awesome match. In my opinion, Kevin Nash's best WWE match. Really good stuff, and it was a delayed rematch from WrestleMania 11. I would say that was definitely better than the WrestleMania 11 match. The match with Vader was very good, even though it was arguably overbooked, and some would say Vader should have won that match and won the title. Shawn Michaels versus Mankind, of course, Mind Games, great match. Survivor Series with Sid, one of the best matches of Sid's career. I mean, arguably the best match of Sid's career. At Survivor Series in '96 when Sid won the title. So yeah, Shawn, and let's not forget the British Bulldog too. They had a really good match. They had the one match where the power went out, but then the rematch was very good as well. So yeah, Shawn had a pretty impressive run in terms of the quality of matches in '96. I mean, those main events definitely delivered in the ring, no doubt. This one comes from Wreck-It Beckett. Hey Aaron, if NXT wasn't around, do you think a lot of the indie New Japan guys would have made it into WWE? That is an interesting question. I think that with NXT, it definitely helped some of these guys catch a break, because in NXT, you can get prepared to be on the main roster and learn the WWE style. With AJ Styles, he went straight to the main roster, but for most of these guys, they go to NXT and they learn how to work the WWE style, which is different from Japan and different from the indies, and it prepares you to be on national television and how to play to the crowd correctly, and how to act when you come out there, and looking at the cameras and all that stuff, and just having that presence of mind being on television. It prepares you for all that. So yeah, I definitely feel that NXT has helped a lot of guys get a shot in WWE that might not have otherwise. And of course, Daniel Bryan and CM Punk overcoming the odds and becoming major stars, that definitely helped as well. That'll do it for this edition of NoDQ&A video. Thanks as always for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, please share it with a friend on Facebook or Twitter. Stay tuned to NoDQ.com for the very latest regarding the Paige situation, and of course WrestleMania in less than 2 weeks. We should have pretty much a final card by Wednesday after SmackDown. I mean, it's looking like 14 matches for WrestleMania, possibly 15. So stay tuned to NoDQ.com for that, and I will see you guys next time.